And personally, as a weightlifting coach, when it comes down to my sport, I don't really give a shit what anyone says who isn't involved in my sport. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and everything in between. And I mean that, so please do not cancel me. Just everyone, okay? That's who I'm addressing in this video. Today, this video is about this Guardian article that was published 4 days ago. Trans weightlifter Laurel Hubbard set to make history at the Tokyo Olympics. Now, I've known about Laurel, and anyone who's been invested in elite weightlifting for a decent amount of time knows about Laurel pretty well, and we saw this coming from a mile away. I actually wasn't planning on talking about this, but Derek from More Plates, More Dates actually kind of dissected a few things that I thought were really interesting, so I figured I'd revisit this topic. Right around 2017, when I started this channel, I made a video about my perspective on transgender athletes in sports and basically male to female, more specifically transgender athletes. And that video, I was a little bit more inflammatory. You guys know I like to make my rants, as shown in my last video. Check that one out. I have a pretty nice rant on the International Weightlifting Federation. I like to make my rants, but I felt like this one was a little bit too edgy. At least, you know, I'm a little bit scared of the woke internet farm. You know, those people, if you say anything that's remotely viralized and basically something that just kind of takes off, your entire life is going to be examined on the internet and off the internet. And, you know, at the time, I didn't want that. Like, I still don't really want that. I just want to talk about weightlifting. And so this video today, I'm going to add in a few things to basically what Derek from More Plates, More Dates talked about. And I'm going to reference his video a little bit. But more importantly, I want to explain how this works in weightlifting, like how her performance before transitioning to after she transitioned and to the future performances that she may or may not have, especially at the Olympics. Like, this is the biggest, this is it for us. This is a Super Bowl. We call our sport Olympic weightlifting. Well, I don't. It's called weightlifting, but most people call it Olympic weightlifting. This is the sport, right? So it is a big deal, but I want this video to serve more as like a little bit of a different approach, right? We want to look at numbers because this ultimately is a numbers game. And so I want to fill you guys in on that, reference a few things that Derek had said. And so, yeah, let's just jump right into it. First things first, you know, that sticks out. Like I said, this is a trans weightlifter, Laurel Hubbard, set to make history at the Tokyo Olympics. Again, this is a Guardian article from about 4 days ago. This is a big deal. She is guaranteed a spot to go to the Olympics. She likely will. You know, she has a lot of Roby points, and Roby points, for those of you who are kind of unsure about the system, I really, you know, I could make a huge video on how all of these things work, but Roby points is like the points that you can get relative to, one, the world records in your weight class, but or the best performers in your weight class, but then also it depends on the meets in which you compete. If you compete at a gold level event, which would be any of the continental championships, which we just had, or world championships, then we look at silver level meets, which are more like Grand Prix or international opens. Roma Cup is one of those. There were some pretty cool lifts going on there. Loredana Toma did well there, and Lasha Talhadze did well there. And then we have bronze level meets, which are like national meets. For us, I think some of our American Opens are bronze level, and that actually means that anyone can compete. Actually, at the Arnold, the last Arnold that was able to happen before COVID, there were a lot of international weightlifters there, and it was really cool. So, so that's how, you know, you compile a bunch of points, and then your Roby score relative to the rest of the world will set you up, and essentially the highest Roby scores of your country will get sent to Rio. It actually is out of the hands of the country's federation who gets to go, I believe. And I could be corrected on this. One of the employees for Weightlifting House has this stuff down pat, so I really, really hope he comments below. His name's Dan Kent, and he knows everything there is to know about this. But I believe that if you are relative to the rest of the world, you have to go, or like they have to send you. So this, I believe, is the situation for Laurel. Again, that could be a little bit different, but she most likely will be going. And so here we are finally getting this news like officially, and it's becoming a big thing. So I want to talk about one part in specific, and then we'll kind of move on from there. But the reason I want to talk about it is because this is exactly what Derek was talking about. So in this, under IOC guidelines issued November 2015, athletes transitioning from male to female can compete in the women's category without requiring surgery to remove their testes, provided their total testosterone level in serum is kept below 10 nanomoles per liter for at least 12 months, a rule followed by the IWF. Of course, the IWF is going to follow whatever the IOC has to say. Now, I'm not sure what caused this rule to go into effect, but I feel like Caster Semenya, the 800-meter runner, was actually intersex. Again, guys, I don't know all of these terms and terminology, but it seemed like that is a somewhat rushed guideline here. And the reason for that is exactly what Derek says right here.
All right, so let's go look at these test levels, and you can see just how ridiculous it is. So if we plug in the unit conversion of 10 nanomoles per liter, you can see here, this is equivalent to 288.42 nanograms per deciliter. So what does that mean? Well, it's considered what the female reference range is for natural testosterone production. It is about, if you were a high-tier genetic specimen of a female, you would be producing maybe 60 nanograms per deciliter, if you were lucky. That would be high. That is not for a chick who is on birth control and is suppressing her T levels by like 50%, which is a lot of chicks. This is not a chick who has subpar lifestyle and diet practices. This is not a chick who is not the cream of the crop in terms of testosterone production and gonadotropin output. This is like the hyper elite, top of the top female is producing 60 nanograms per deciliter. And on top of that, how much free testosterone does she have relative to these transgender athletes?
Even with the constraints, if you had hormone blockers, you would still be allowed to have over 4 times as much as the most elite female athlete in your system. Still, you're allowed to have that. And then mind you, all of the years, all of the axial loading, all of the, bone growth, difference in sizes of bone, different leverages, different everything. We're talking about years and years and years of that, 35 years of that, then transitioning and still being allowed to have 4 times or at least 4 times more testosterone in, serum testosterone than the most hyper elite female. That's where we're starting to get a little bit ridiculous. But here I want to talk about the actual performance now, right? The actual numbers that she was putting up. This is also pretty interesting. She's the child of Dick Hubbard, the mayor of Auckland, or former mayor of Auckland. She competed as Gavin Hubbard before transitioning, and she had New Zealand records in 1998 with the men's 105 plus division, with a snatch of 135 and a clean and jerk of 170 and a total of 300 kilos. Obviously, that math doesn't line up. That probably means that you're looking at, she did 135 in one meet, and then she did 170 in another meet, and then in another meet, she did a 300 total with, one or the other, or maybe none of those numbers. It's totally possible to have that happen. So either way, from my knowledge as a weightlifting coach, if you are a junior lifter and you are a junior super heavy lifter, first off, it's a pretty rare class to have. Like, it's not the most competitive class. I think that senior super heavyweights, that's obviously, it's much more competitive. And that's because, growth takes time. Like, to be a fully grown super heavyweight takes a long time. To be a fully grown, middleweight or lightweight doesn't take that much time. So you're going to see that competitive curve is going to be different, right? But beside all of that, 135, 170, those are pretty good for saying, let's say a 19-year-old male. Those are pretty good. Let's just say very good, right? Because that's something that's going to get you into senior nationals. Those are usually numbers that are going to get you into senior nationals. Usually numbers that are going to get you, obviously, into junior nationals. And then whatever you do in your country, you can then go into junior worlds and world meets and things like that. But 135, 170, well, if we're looking at that on the grand scheme of things as a male, and an elite male junior, those are not great numbers at all. Just to put this in perspective, my best lifts as a super heavy when I was 111 kilos was 140 in the snatch and 175 in the clean and jerk. Those were both in competition. So these lifts, you know, these were the junior records in New Zealand. They're not bad, right? But they're not great by any means. That was her history. She did that in 1998. The amount of weightlifting that she either could or could not have done since 1998 is pretty substantial, right? There's not any other history outside of that. But, you know, she at some point transitioned, got back into weightlifting, and then this is where she made her mark in 2017 at the Australian International and Australian Open in Melbourne. I think there were two different meets. She did 123 kilo snatch and a 145 kilo clean and jerk. First meet back as a transitioned female for a total of 268 kilos at a body weight of 131. Now, I don't know if they were able to measure testosterone levels or if they took that into consideration. You know, we're talking about an international meet. Did she measure her testosterone levels, and were they underneath 298 nanograms per deciliter for 12 months leading up to this meet? I don't know. You know, this is where it becomes very confusing, very cloudy. Like, we're looking at someone just coming into this thing that maybe we're not prepared for. After that, she won, and that's when she got a lot of flack. People were saying that it was unfair, and I agree with that. But then she was selected for the world team. Okay, which was in Anaheim. At this particular Worlds, a lot of countries were sanctioned. A lot of countries were sanctioned because of the prior world events and the uncovering of doping that had occurred years prior. They were taking B samples and they were running them through more advanced testing, and they were popping more lifters. So this was a time where if anyone was to kind of come out of nowhere and do well, this was the time. And it just so happened that Laurel's first world championships was this one. Now, she did a 124 and 151 clean and jerk. So 124 snatch, 151 clean and jerk for 275 kilos total. And that got her second place. Now, that's a big deal. We're talking about second best in the world. And that is a male who is going from somewhere pretty unremarkable and actually, if we were to kind of objectively look at it, never ever having a chance of even remotely competing like on the level of elite males, on the low end snatching 190 and on the low end clean and jerking 230. That's what males at super heavyweight are doing. Not even remotely close. I mean, literally, I'm a better weightlifter, okay? Then going and transitioning to female and becoming one of the best in the world. Are we kind of seeing what's happening here? Thank God that Sarah Robles won that meet, because if she hadn't, there would be a lot more outrage. And I know from speaking with her coach, I'm not going to put any words in his mouth, but I remember him saying they were not happy about it. They were not happy about it. Just so thankful that Sarah was able to beat her. So then, fast forward, keep moving on. We get the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast of Australia. This is where she injures her elbow in 2018. And it's interesting, this photo right here, it's that photo. And you can see, I think the left elbow is already starting to dislocate. It's kind of messed up, but, news sources, they don't know any better. They just choose whatever they want. And this is the number that was on the bar when she hurt her elbow, I believe. Anyways, did not finish because of the injury, comes back to Thailand and actually puts up the best total of her career. We're talking about 131 in the snatch and 154 in the clean and jerk. Her total has gone up. Obviously, the placement has gone down because the other countries have come in. But if she's to continue on this trend, who knows where she will be at. We still don't know what lifters, what competitive female lifters are going to be going and competing in Tokyo. Tokyo has a very small amount of competitors compared to a world meet, so it actually might be less competitive if that sounds insane. But if her total keeps going up, you know, you have a jump from 275 to 285, say she gets 290, even in 290, we're looking at a potential medal. And now we have this article coming out, which is not really a slam piece. I think it's actually more about, it's just like putting everything together, you know, looking at it pretty objectively. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But this is, you know, adding, again, fuel to the fire. A lot of political pundits, a lot of, you know, Fox News, CNBC, both sides of the spectrum. Everyone's going to have their take on this. And personally, as a weightlifting coach, when it comes down to my sport, I don't really give a what anyone says who isn't involved in my sport, right? Like, I know the numbers. I know how this works. Going from a junior, whatever, decent lifter, then going from 35 years as a man and then becoming one of the more dominant weightlifters as a female, like, that's just not fair. Objectively not fair. Taking that and having that level of an advantage, I don't know. I don't know what goes through the mind of someone who thinks that that's okay. I personally don't think it's okay. This is my opinion, and I know I'm starting to rant a little bit, but anyways, let me know what you guys think. I appreciate Derek for going over this, or else I wouldn't have myself, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.